Cardfight Vanguard Divines just released its second booster set in Illusionless Strife. In this series, I'll be going over all of the new decks that came out within this set. In this video, I'll be going over the new lyrical ride line, Flamme-Glam. Flamme-Glam is an archetype built to form a band of different named Flamme-Glam units to bring out their star unit, the starter of the deck. Our main boss unit is Flamme-Glam Rugia. Rugia is actually a fairly strong Vanguard. It has an in-archetype tutor for just the Soul Blast. The second effect, it gives you a second Vanguard attack and allows it to get an additional drive check that way. Both the Soul Blast tutor and the extra Vanguard swing gives the deck a lot more cards than you would expect. With just the Vanguard skill alone, you +2 in card economy every single turn. For our ride line, we're playing the Flamme-Glam ride line Joanna and Velt. Whenever we ride over Joanna with Velt, then we call both Joanna and Bluecria from Soul, and at the end of the turn, they go back into Soul. And then when we ride over Velt with Rogia, we essentially rank a chain and draw 2 and bot deck a card from our hand. They both also have the effect that at the end of the battle they attack, and your Vanguard is Bluecria, then Joanna can retire itself to countercharge, and Velt can retire itself to retire an opponent's rearguard. So this ride line is very aggressive because you start off on turn 2 with 2 additional rearguards that will go back to Soul at end of turn. And then you also do a Ranker Chain effect and be able to draw into more pieces, making this deck pretty consistent at what it does. The secondary effects don't do anything until after you use Rogia's skill, but Velt giving an extra spot retire can be pretty good into matchups that need certain pieces in play. And then Jana giving a counter charge is also really big because of our Vanguard and a primary rearguard in this deck using 2 or more counterblasts a turn total. Lastly is the starter, which doesn't do anything extra, but it's so important to have in Soul because we need it in Soul to re-ride with Rugia. And if we don't have it in there, then the other Flamme-Glam units don't do anything. The additional Flamme-Glam name is also really big to have that we actually played 2 additional copies of it in this deck. Just for another different name, but also because our grade 1 wants to be attacking and not really be a booster. So having a searchable booster is really nice, especially when combined with our main rearguard, Dive to Blue Lucaris. Whenever our Flamme-Glam Vanguard swings, we can counterblast 1, bot deck a Flamme-Glam unit from our drop zone. We draw a card, and we, the player, get the skill that all of our Flamme-Glam units get plus 5k power for the turn. The main thing to note with this card is that it gives you, the player, the skill, not your Vanguard. So you can swing with Rogia first, use Lucaris effect to draw and give at least half your board plus 5k power. Then the 5k power sticks around for when you ride down to Bluecria. Overall, Lucaris is the best card in the deck next to Rogia, and the combination of them gives a ton of additional card advantage to this deck. If you have multiple Lucaris on the board, then you can use those skills multiple times if you have the counterblast for it. If your hand is flooded with Flamme-Glam units early, you can also use Lucaris turn 2 and make 20k columns very easily and be super aggressive. The other direct support this deck got is overcoming countless defeats Amdusia. Amdusia is really good because it has a free top 3 search for a Flamme-Glam unit whenever you call it to rearguard. And then it's also a booster if your Vanguard's a Flamme-Glam, which it's always going to be. The last core card I want to talk about is Loving Pink Franchette. The first effect is Chris Rain locked, so it doesn't matter in here, but the second effect is whenever it attacks, if you have 3 or more units with different card names, this unit gets plus 5k power for the turn. And if you have 4 more units with different card names, at the end of that battle, you choose up to one of your other rearguards and bounce it back to hand. So Franchette seems a little weird in here because our front row is already so contested, but Franchette honestly is a better front row rearguard than having Velt because it'll already have the power boost Velt will have from Licorice, and then also have a generally better effect to bounce one of your rearguards back. It's also really good in the grade 2 game of this deck. Because of the ride line on turn 2, we also called 2 rearguards with different names from our Vanguard as well. So just doing that and then calling Franchette has the 4 different names, and Franchette is going to be able to swing 15 and bounce a rearguard back. And then for our Regalis piece, we are playing Gratia's Gradle. Generally, being able to hit Persona Ride is very important. And then the Overtrigger can really be anything. I personally prefer the Lyrical Overtrigger because the power boost it can give for the rest of the game. Your primary Mulligan target is Franchette, since that is a lot of the early game power of this deck. If you don't see it, then the early game becomes quite a bit worse. The other card is Licorice, because of its ability to recycle pieces, and it being able to help the deck hit really big numbers as early as turn 2, and is also a really strong card advantage piece in the deck. During your early game, you want to be as aggressive as possible and force the opponent to take a lot of damage to make Blue Clear stronger later in the game. Because of Joanna, whenever you ride over it, you're gonna get 2 free bodies on turn 2, and you can utilize Franchette and Licorice to make it really powerful on turn 2 swing. And then by the end of that turn, you're gonna be able to send both Joanna and Blue Clear back into Soul, and then use Franchette to bounce Licorice back to hand, so then you can do it all again the next turn. On turn 3, you typically want to be at 2 damage. In this board setup, you can actually hit pretty hard and end the turn with a decent sized hand because of the bouncing from Franchette and the additional draws you get in battle phase. And then late game, you want to try to have secured your Persona rides and have your Counterblast opened up to use 1 to 2 Licorice plus Rogia. Your board setups will typically be similar to your grade 3 turn, but you have access to Persona ride as well. This makes your numbers much bigger, plus your restand number will be bigger since you and your opponent will be at a higher damage count. A couple other cards I didn't talk about yet. Person, whenever you guard with it, you put a Flamme-Glam from drop to bottom and it gets 10k shield. We also play the Energy Cyclers because this deck doesn't utilize energy at all. And there's not really a better card this deck can utilize, so having Energy Cyclers to just dig deeper into the deck is really nice. And can also be extra Franchettes once we start hitting Persona Ride, since it'll give a unit plus 5k and then also be able to bounce it back to hand. For the budget build, we took out Energy Cyclers and Franchette. We put in the 4th copy of Person. We maxed out Velt. And then for new cards, we are playing 4 Siska, which whenever it's placed on rearguard and you don't have another rearguard with the same name as this unit, you can Counter Blast 1 to draw or Energy Blast 3 to gain plus 10k power for the turn. So it has the versatility to be a additional draw, but most of the time you'll use the Energy Blast to gain plus 10k power for the turn. And then on following turns, you can call over it with another one in order to do it again. And then the last slots are filled with Vibrant Symphony, which is a blitz order that if your Vanguarders hit this turn, then it's a 30k shield. This variation of the deck is built more towards being a bit more defensive and be able to survive really big attacks from the opponent. Flamme-Glam is my personal favorite deck from the set. It has the makings to be a very strong deck with how consistent it is, and if it gets 1 new Flamme-Glam unit, then this deck can be a real powerhouse in the future. Thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. I'll see you guys in the next one.